picture yourself walking down a jet bridge. You know, you are about to get onto a flight, and as you cross that threshold onto the plane, you just sort of glance into the cockpit.
Right, we do it every time.
Yeah, exactly. And you have this absolute non-negotiable expectation about the person sitting in that captain's chair. I mean, you expect that they have spent hundreds, if not like thousands of hours in a high-fidelity flight simulator.
Absolutely.
You expect they have experienced every terrifying worst-case scenario. Engine failure, severe turbulence, zero visibility landings, all of it, long before you ever handed over your boarding pass.
Well, the aviation industry learned decades ago that you just cannot build operational muscle memory by, reading a manual.
Right.
You have to neurologically simulate the disaster in order to actually survive the real disaster. I mean, the brain needs to feel that simulated stress so that when the real crisis hits, panic doesn't override the training.
But then you step into the corporate world, and suddenly that whole flight simulator approach it completely vanishes.
It really does. It's wild.
We are looking at a landscape where the people steering multi-billion-dollar companies through absolute operational chaos are practically flying blind. So welcome to today's deep dive. We are exploring the future of high-stakes executive training.
And it is a fascinating topic.
It really is. Our source material today is incredibly interesting. It is a February 2026 press release and detailed excerpts from a white paper by EON AI Ventures. They are outlining their brand new EON Reality Soft Skills Platform version 2.0.
Yeah, and this white paper, it outlines a really profound shift in corporate psychology. We are moving away from treating executive communication and crisis management as this theoretical academic exercise. We're finally starting to treat it as a hard, measurable science, which is a huge deal.
Because usually when we talk about artificial intelligence in the workplace, the conversation is, entirely focused on AI replacing human jobs. That's all anyone talks about.
Right, the whole automation fear.
Exactly. But today we are looking at something completely different. We're looking at how AI and immersive tech are being deployed to save companies from a massive impending human resource crisis, specifically a catastrophic loss of institutional knowledge.
It's a massive issue right now.
Okay, let's unpack this. We always hear about flight simulators for pilots, but why do we expect executives to handle a massive company disaster after just clicking through a few multiple choice questions in a web portal?
Yeah, the source material addresses that exact tension. Because this platform, it isn't just a software update with some shiny new virtual avatar.
Right, it's bigger than that.
Much bigger. It represents a fundamental shift in how we bridge the gap between technical upskilling and mission-critical soft skills. For decades, those two domains have been completely siloed.
They really have. Technical over here, soft skills over there.
Exactly. Technical skills were rigorously tested in these highly realistic environments. But soft skills like de-escalating a panic team or negotiating under intense pressure, they were treated as this ambiguous, unquantifiable art form.
Like you either had it or you didn't.
Exactly. And this platform is attempting to merge them out of sheer necessity.
And the sources outline a literal ticking time bomb driving that necessity. I mean, we are facing a monumental generational knowledge gap. The numbers in this white paper are just staggering.
They really are.
It says over 50% of the workforce is projected to retire in the next 5 to 7 years.
Half the global workforce walking out the door in just over half a decade. Think about that.
It's mind-blowing.
And when a seasoned executive retires, they aren't just taking their Rolodex with them. They are taking deeply ingrained instinctual knowledge. They take the muscle memory of how to navigate a supply chain collapse.
Right.
Or how to keep a team functioning when a facility is actively catching fire. That experiential intuition is incredibly difficult to transfer to a new hire.
Which brings up a critical concept from the text. They call it the 80% versus 100% problem. Generic AI tools, or your standard corporate learning management systems, they might get a new workforce to 80% readiness.
Sure, they can teach the baseline procedures.
Right, but in high-risk environments, 80% is simply not enough. I mean, an 80% contained oil spill is still a catastrophic environmental disaster.
Exactly. Managing critical infrastructure means the margin for error is functionally zero. Anything less than a 100% mission-critical proficiency can lead to massive operational disruptions, safety failures, or, worse.
Yeah.
The text makes the argument that standard onboarding simply cannot close that final 20% gap.
Wait, I have to push back on this premise a little bit.
Right.
Companies already spend billions of dollars on corporate training every single year.
Oh, absolutely. Huge budgets.
They bring in expensive consultants, they host multi-day offsites, they run complex learning modules. Are the sources saying all of that capital is just being wasted?
Well, what's fascinating here is how aggressively the white paper calls out the failure of historical soft skills training. The authors assert that soft skills training has severely lagged behind technical training in terms of delivery effectiveness.
Really? In what way?
Because it fails to trigger any real psychological stakes. Think about how we currently train for a crisis in the corporate world. It is usually a flat role-playing exercise in some sterile conference room.
Oh man, I think we have all lived through this.
Right.
You pair up with Gary from HR, you are holding a lukewarm coffee, and you have to pretend Gary is this furious stakeholder threatening a massive lawsuit.
And Gary is just reading from a printed sheet of paper.
Exactly. It is awkward, everyone feels incredibly self-conscious, and the biggest stressor is literally just hoping you finish before lunch. There is zero real pressure.
And that's the core issue. The human brain is incredibly efficient at recognizing artificial environments. When you are role-playing with Gary, your brain isn't releasing cortisol or adrenaline.
It knows you're safe.
Exactly. And without that neurochemical stress response, you aren't forming the deep, resilient neural pathways required for real-world crisis management.
Wow.
You are isolated in a quiet room, focusing only on the words you are reading off a paper. You are entirely divorced from the environmental chaos that actually triggers decision fatigue in real life.
Which naturally forces the question, right? If flat roleplay is a total neurological failure, what does a training scenario that actually mimics the chaos of real life look like?
Right, how do you fix it?
Yeah, how do you build a corporate flight simulator that tricks the brain into feeling genuine stakes?
Well, that is the specific problem. The EON Reality Soft Skills Platform version 2.0 was engineered to solve. The core of this solution relies on what they are calling the multi-avatar interaction engine.
And they aren't starting with something low stakes either. Like, they didn't pick a tense annual performance review.
No, they went straight for the high-pressure stuff.
The proof of concept deployment detailed in the white paper targets executive teams in the oil and gas industry. Specifically, it puts the user inside a pipeline incident.
High stakes, right there.
Yeah, an executive must simultaneously manage technical operations, coordinate emergency response, and handle stakeholder communication all at once.
Because a pipeline incident is the ultimate multidimensional crisis. You can't just be a good communicator. You have to interpret rapidly changing technical data while simultaneously managing human panic.
It's overwhelming.
Very. The platform forces you to balance all of those conflicting priorities while the situation around you is actively deteriorating.
And the way they visualize this for the user is just wild. Like, if you are sitting at your desk looking at this, it is split panel system.
Yes.
Here's where it gets really interesting. It sounds like a high-stakes video game where the final boss fight isn't shooting a monster, but successfully talking down a panic safety manager while literally watching a pipeline leak in the background.
That's a great way to put it.
Right. The visual layout gives 60% of the screen to what they call the contextual world panel. And this isn't a static zoom background. It is a dynamic, visually immersive rendering of an industrial facility in full crisis mode.
You are seeing alarms flash, gauges spike. The environment is reacting to the crisis.
Yeah. And the remaining 40% of the screen is the avatar conversation panel. This is where you engage with AI-driven avatars in dynamic, adaptive dialogue.
So you are forced to monitor the visual disaster in the larger panel while simultaneously managing the human disaster in the smaller panel.
But those two panels can't just be playing separate video loops, otherwise it's just a distraction. The text mentions a technology tying them together called the bidirectional event bus.
Yes, the bidirectional event bus.
That sounds incredibly dense. What is actually happening under the hood when a user is interacting with this split screen?
Okay, so stripping away the technical jargon, the bidirectional event bus is essentially the nervous system of the simulation. It means the natural language processing engine, the part running the AI avatar, is directly wired into the physics and state engine of the visual simulation.
Wait, really?
Yeah. The visual elements and the conversation flow are constantly feeding data to each other in real time.
So my tone of voice could literally impact the physical environment on the screen.
Absolutely. Imagine you are talking to the virtual safety manager. If you use a calm, authoritative tone and successfully de-escalate their panic, their AI subroutine might prompt them to give you the technical override code.
Okay.
And that allows you to stabilize the pressure gauge in the 60% contextual world panel. But if you yell at the avatar or use aggressive language, their stress parameters spike.
They get defensive.
Right? They might freeze up or argue back.
Yeah.
And because you wasted precious seconds arguing, a valve in that visual panel literally bursts, escalating the physical chaos.
Oh, wow. So you are forced to react to live context cues, not just read down a predetermined script.
Exactly.
That level of realism completely relies on the tech being flawless, though. I mean, if I ask the AI safety manager a complex question and it takes them like 10 seconds to process the audio and generate a reply, the whole illusion shattered.
Oh, for sure. The magic is gone.
Yeah, I'm suddenly back in a clunky software program and my brain realizes I am just talking to a computer.
Latency is the absolute enemy of immersion. The human brain expects a very specific rhythm in conversation. If there's a lag, we notice it instantly.
Right.
The white paper highlights that the system boasts a sub-2-second response time. That metric is critical. It ensures the conversation flow with the multi-stakeholder avatars bypasses the uncanny valley and feels rhythmic and natural.
And while you are trying to maintain this high-wire conversational rhythm, the system is actively analyzing you. The text outlines a feature called the real-time whisper coach.
Yes, the whisper coach is a really fascinating element. It provides live text guidance overlaid right on the screen during the simulation.
Like subtitles.
Kind of. It acts as an internal monologue, suggesting phrasing adjustments or behavioral corrections right in the middle of the interaction. It might analyze the avatar's dialogue and prompt you with, acknowledge their safety concerns before asking for the pressure data.
Okay, I have a major problem with that, though.
Really? Why?
If I have a whisper coach literally feeding me the right words on the screen while I'm talking, aren't I just reading a teleprompter? How does that actually build the muscle memory for a real crisis when the prompter vanishes and I am standing in a boardroom with actual people screaming at me?
That's a fair point.
It sounds like a massive crutch.
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, EON anticipates that exact dependency issue. The platform isn't designed to keep you on those training wheels permanently.
No, it's not.
No. The white paper outlines a structural framework called the progressive immersion ladder. The whisper coach is simply the bottom rung.
Okay, so the user is actively climbing up through different layers of cognitive difficulty.
Exactly. The learner transitions through escalating layers of engagement. You begin with the whisper coach in a standard desktop environment to learn the baseline crisis protocols.
Got it.
But as your proficiency increases, the immersion escalates and the crutches are removed. You move from a flat screen up to full 3D exploration using a VR headset.
Where you are totally immersed.
Right. You have complete physical agency in the virtual facility. And finally, it culminates in full augmented reality, or AR, simulations.
Okay, let me visualize that. By the time I reach the top of the immersion ladder, the training wheels are completely off. I am wearing an AR headset in my actual physical office.
Yes.
And the simulation maps the crisis onto my real-world surroundings. So I might look at my actual coffee table and see a virtual pipe bursting out of it while an AI avatar stands in my real doorway demanding answers.
Exactly. It forces your brain to process the simulated crisis within your actual physical reality, creating incredibly sticky cognitive pathways.
Wow.
You build the foundational vocabulary with the whisper coach on a 2D screen, but you pressure test those pathways in the physical chaos of the AR simulation.
Okay, let's assume you survive the AR simulation. You successfully talk down the stakeholders, you manage the pipeline leak, and the alarm bells finally stop.
You did it.
Yeah, but how do you actually know if you performed well? Historically, evaluating soft skills like leadership or communication is just a nightmare because it relies entirely on human subjectivity.
Right, and quantifying human behavior is arguably the hardest problem in enterprise training. This platform's approach to assessment is probably its most disruptive feature. It removes the human evaluator entirely.
Totally automated.
Yes. First, the system utilizes what they call branching consequence visualization.
Which operates like a massive post-session decision tree, right?
Exactly. It is a highly detailed diagram generated the moment the simulation ends. It maps out exactly how your specific dialogue choices cascadingly led down specific paths to various outcomes.
So you can see every divergence.
Yeah. It provides visual feedback demonstrating, step by step, how your decisions either aligned with or deviated from the optimal crisis management strategy.
You literally see the butterfly effect of your own words. You can look at the map and realize, oh, because I used a dismissive tone in minute 2, the safety manager withheld crucial pressure data in minute 4, which directly caused the catastrophic system failure in minute 10. It traces the physical disaster back to a specific failure in human empathy.
It completely removes the ambiguity of standard feedback. There's no guessing. But the platform goes even deeper with its assessment engine enhancements, specifically focusing on situational awareness scoring.
Okay, this specific feature blew my mind when I read it. The platform generates a literal, multi-dimensional radar graph that breaks down how well you interpreted the visual context during your conversations.
It does.
But how can a computer possibly measure my situational awareness?
Well, it comes back to the split-screen design and the immersive hardware. The platform is analyzing massive amounts of biometric and interaction data.
What kind of data?
It tracks your eye movements within the headset to see if you actually looked at the flashing pressure gauge.
Wow.
It runs voice stress analysis to gauge your panic level. Measures the millisecond delay between an alarm sounding and you addressing it in your dialogue.
So it takes all the subjectivity completely out of the review process. Usually after a crisis drill, a manager just pats you on the back and says, try to be a little more observant next time, or you seemed a bit passive.
Right, which isn't helpful at all.
No. But the system delivers a mathematical radar graph charting your emotional intelligence, your visual processing speed, and your crisis de-escalation skills.
Dan Lajerskar, the chairman of EON AI Ventures, captures the philosophy behind this perfectly in the press release. He states, skills of the future demand fidelity of experience.
Fidelity of experience, meaning if the training environment isn't capturing the high-definition complexity and the overwhelming data streams of the real world, the training is functionally useless.
Exactly. And it is important to note the pedigree behind that statement. The text emphasizes that EON Reality isn't just some startup suddenly pivoting to this concept.
Right, they've been around.
They have 25 years of experience in XR extended reality and immersive learning solutions. They already operate 2 massive platform businesses, the Enterprise AI Platform for Operational Intelligence and the Virtual Campus and Virtual Compass for scalable educational training.
So they have the foundation.
They've spent decades building the underlying architecture to make this possible. Producing objective, trackable metrics for soft skills is the absolute holy grail for corporate enterprise transformation.
Because the old business adage holds true, right?
Yeah.
If you can measure it, you can manage it.
Precisely.
And if you can measure soft skills with a radar graph, you can rapidly scale that competency across an entire global organization before that 50% of the veteran workforce retires and takes their instincts with them.
It fundamentally rewrites the corporate continuity equation. A board of directors is no longer forced to just cross their fingers and hope a newly promoted executive just naturally has good instincts.
They don't have to guess anymore.
No. They can verify through hard data and hundreds of simulated hours that the executive can maintain situational awareness and communicate effectively when the operational systems are actively collapsing around them.
So what does this all mean? If you are listening to this right now, whether you are an executive dealing with critical infrastructure like a pipeline, or you are just a manager trying to navigate a highly volatile team meeting without losing your cool, the era of treating soft skills as these mystical, untrainable natural talents is ending.
It really is.
The tools to aggressively measure, practice, and neurologically refine high-stakes communication are finally here. We are officially moving from the whiteboard roleplay with Gary from HR to the corporate fight simulator.
Which leaves us with a rather profound implication to consider.
Oh, I like where this is going.
If platforms like EON's can now generate incredibly precise, biometric, data-driven radar graphs of our emotional intelligence and our situational awareness under pressure, how long until these immersive crisis simulations become a mandatory part of the corporate job interview process?
Oh, that's intense.
Right. Will your future career trajectory be decided not by the bullet points on your resume or the prestige of your university, but by your biometric high score in an AI-driven, augmented reality disaster scenario?
Wow. Imagine walking into an interview for a promotion, and instead of asking you to describe your greatest weakness, the hiring manager just hands you a VR headset and says, "The virtual pipeline is leaking and your team is panicking. Show us what you've got."
It's coming.
That completely changes the landscape of the modern workforce. Well, thank you for joining us on today's deep dive into the EON Reality Soft Skills platform. Stay curious, keep exploring, and we will catch you next time.